In this lecture, we're going to talk about Tailwind. It's the new kid on the block. In the past year, Tailwind's user base has grown exponentially. There's a good reason for it. Tailwind makes developing sites so much easier and faster. So what is Tailwind? Tailwind is a CSS framework. It's similar to other frameworks like Bootstrap and Bulma. It stands out from the crowd because of the approach it takes with CSS. Let's talk about how Bootstrap approaches CSS. Bootstrap comes with classes for building UI elements. For example, let's say we wanted to use the card component. This code snippet shows how a card component can be created with Bootstrap. We need to create some div tags and slap some classes on them. Pretty simple, right? The biggest criticism of Bootstrap is how similar a lot of sites look. It's because Bootstrap takes care of defining a predefined set of components. These components are ready to go out of the box. Customizing them is completely optional. In some cases, you may want to change the appearance of some Bootstrap's element. For example, let's say we want the color of the title to be red. We can select the card title element to apply the changes. This works, but it's going to affect other card elements with titles. One solution to get around this is by using a better specifier, such as assigning an ID. It works, but it doesn't scale very well. This approach forces us to constantly switch between documents and style sheets. We might also have to rewrite the same CSS. The more UI elements we have, the more CSS we'll have to write. Another challenge is having to memorize what every class does. The classes in Bootstrap describe the UI element. They don't describe what properties are applied to the element. Tailwind resolves this issue by focusing on a different way to write templates. Tailwind does not focus on UI elements. If you were to browse the documentation, you won't encounter many UI elements. Instead, Tailwind focuses on utility classes. What does that exactly mean? Tailwind will define hundreds of classes. Each class will modify one property. For example, there's a class called M4. The M4 class will set the margins of an element to 1 rem. There aren't any other properties under this class. On the other hand, a Bootstrap class can modify multiple properties of an element. For this reason, Tailwind has a larger learning curve. It's a framework that demands solid knowledge of CSS. You won't get far if you don't know much about CSS. Luckily, CSS is a simple language. Tailwind looks difficult to read, but it's not once you understand what each class does. By looking at the classes, you will immediately know what properties are being applied to the element. This saves you time from having to switch over to the style sheet to understand the class. In the resource section of this lecture, I provide a link to the official Tailwind site. On the home page, we'll be shown an example of the type UI elements we can create with this framework. On the right, we'll find what our HTML will look like with Tailwind. Unlike Bootstrap, multiple classes are being applied to the element. Each class will change one property. From this live example, we can see how each class affects the element as they're added in. This leads us to the question, how do we know which class to use? Luckily, Tailwind has some of the best documentation around. Each class is well documented. At the top, we can search for any class. Let's search for the M4 class we looked at earlier. According to the documentation, this class will change the margins of an element. It'll even tell us by how much. We never have to look at the CSS. The documentation will always tell us what property and value a class will have. We're not limited to a single class either. There are multiple classes for changing the margins of an element. We can add margins to one side or axis. Tailwind seems great so far, so what's the catch? Tailwind is much larger than most libraries. Uncompressed, Tailwind is over 300 kilobytes large. Luckily, Tailwind works hand in hand with a library called PurgeCSS. In the resource section of this lecture, I provide a link to the PurgeCSS library. PurgeCSS will scan your HTML for classes that are being used. It'll then remove unused CSS from your style sheets. PurgeCSS is commonly used with Tailwind. On average, most Tailwind sites use less than 10 kilobytes. This process is automatically done for us by installing the Tailwind module. As you can see, Tailwind is rising in popularity for a reason. If you're confused by any class we use, you can always consult the documentation. It'll tell you right away what property gets applied to an element. For this course, we're going to be using Tailwind for our music app. In the next lecture, we're going to install Tailwind.